Started. So today's video is about, I called it Back to Wilderness, and it's about reconnecting to our natural design. Now, the world wild really needs a little bit of unpacking, and I wanted to start there. Wild, for some reason, has gotten this really, you know, terrifying connotations to some. It scares a lot of people, and in a way, it represents something like uncontrollable and something, crazy. But in reality, wild, in the wilderness that I'm referring to, and I think that we really need to sort of bring back that beautiful word to really reflect what it means at its source. Wilderness is really our nature. It's our mother nature is wild, and we by default, coming from mother nature, are also wild. And what does that mean? It just simply means we follow this spontaneous way of, the cycles of life and death and growth and spontaneous evolution, and things happen without any control. So that wild that you can see in nature, if you leave, let's say, I've seen this actually during the pandemic, if you leave certain places without, cutting the grass, or without building, without polluting, soon enough nature takes over, and it doesn't have a certain, specific way that it's going to grow. It grows all over the place. It takes over everything. And that's the nature of wilderness, right? It's powerful. It's the principle of life. It's kind of that seed energy of growth, of the concept of life comes, is intricately related to the wilderness. And it's also, it doesn't follow, nature does follow some patterns, but it doesn't follow rules and definitions that we as societies have defined. So that's one of the reasons that wild and wilderness is so scary to a lot of us, because it's where we lose control and allow things to happen. But the wild that I want to talk about is not about necessarily directly talking about nature. I want to talk about our nature. And in a sense, they're one and the same, right? We think of ourselves as these really intricate creations that are above nature, but in reality, we are part of nature. Not only we're part of nature, we are nature. So all of the processes that happen in nature, our bodies are a microcosm that really represent that wild growth, that represent that all the natural processes. So what are some of these processes that I'm talking about? Let's get more down to understanding what it means. It's not just some kind of a concept. Our circadian rhythms, right? Like when we feel the inclination to go to sleep and wake up, that are related obviously to the celestial bodies, like the sun and the moon. All of those things, right? Like the life and death cycle. So our cells are constantly replacing themselves. Especially for women, we have, the monthly cycles where we're creating or capable of creating life, and then we are shedding that life. So it's a constant process of regeneration and death that we have to allow for the new cells and new life to come. We have a lot of the natural healing processes that are part of this nature. So this is something we also very much don't respect. And they're related to, if you allow yourself to really be with certain symptoms without immediately killing them off with medications, such as, for example, if you have fever, granted it's not like fever where you're dying, but if you allow fever to take its course, fever has a very natural purpose, and it's bringing all of your body into a defensive reaction, right? So it's there to kill off the pathogens, the invaders. And if you immediately kill it with the with medication, what you're going to do is you're going to hinder that natural response. So all of these natural processes, or for example, if we take, as women, we take birth control pills. This is a very controversial topic, but birth control pills mimic a state in our body when we're pregnant, right? So hormonally, if we're on the pill, we're always in that phase as if we're pregnant. And if you study how women fluctuate in their desires, in the way that they are throughout their cycle, you will see that it completely changes the way that women are. So for example, our natural sexual desire completely goes through these ups and downs. So for instance, when we're ovulating, that's when we really feel the highest drive, and we're attracted to certain men that would create a perfect offspring, for instance. If you're almost at menstruation, then you become a little bit kind of desperate to create that offspring, so you're interested in any kind of men. These are really interesting studies that exist out there. I can share them later with you guys. And then when you are on your menstrual cycle, or if you're pregnant, you're craving to be with men that are much more like you, so genetically much more like you, like your father, your brothers, so your kin, to take care of you. So as you can see, if you're constantly on the birth control pill that interferes with your natural hormonal processes, then you're much more likely to, and they've done studies where women end up marrying men who are genetically similar to them, and once they go off the birth control pill, guess what happens? They're not attracted to them anymore. So it's a simple hormonal shift, but it could completely change your life. So I'm not posing here anything against or pro the pill. I'm just pointing out to you that our natural processes define the way that we are. They create really important reactions in our bodies. They move us. They really direct us in certain directions. As we were talking about with the healing, if you are following your natural processes, you end up really knowing your body well, listening to your cues. And if you are feeling, let's say, slightly more tired one day than the next, and you go to sleep and you drink more water, stuff like that, you're much less likely, let's say, to get sick than someone who doesn't listen to their cues and ends up, pushing through, and then they end up getting sick. So our bodies are extremely intelligent. So going back again to the wilderness, it's really not about the definition of wild that we normally have, this like uncontrollable thing, but it is actually a very incredible design behind the natural processes that's always operating at the core of who we are. And when we follow it, life becomes not only we regain our vitality, health, mental well-being, but we also kind of flow with who we truly are. And that helps us really find our purpose, find our direction. Oftentimes I hear people saying like, oh my God, I do everything correctly. I follow a diet, and I'm, healthy living, and I do all these self-development classes, but I'm still feeling lost. A lot of times it comes from this misalignment that we've created with who we are at a primitive, natural, level in our bodies. And by primitive, by the way, I don't mean anything negative. On the contrary, to me, primitive is the way back to nature. Primitive is the way back to our natural way of being. And I'm going to go into that a little bit as well. So when we were created, and throughout thousands of years, millennia, we were designed in a certain way. Our bodies operate in a certain way. And even though now we live in societies that are completely different and have a very different set of incentives and you know, environments. Our bodies haven't changed, and they follow the same rhythms, right? The rhythms of even if your work says, you know, you have to wake up and be at work before sunrise and work for 10 hours. That doesn't mean that our bodies have changed. They still need, you know, to wake up with a sunrise, and they're not used to sitting in a chair for 10 hours. So as we divert from our natural ways, we're creating discrepancy, we're creating this disconnect, we're creating the misalignment that, in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of people, is the cause of most of our ailments in our society, both on a physical level, emotional level, as well as at the level of like societal, you know, issues that we're having currently. So how do we connect to this wild energy, this natural energy that's absolutely essential for understanding who we are? It has to do, first of all, it's much easier to do it as a child. So parenting here is critical. Not to say that you can't correct things afterwards, but what happens is in the first 7 years of our lives, we operate at a very different level. We're almost like in a hypnotic state. So our brain operates at a very sort of, where everything that we receive, this information goes directly in our subconscious, and we get programmed in a very direct way. And this was done, again, by a natural design in order for us to accommodate and adapt to the environments that we were living in. And that was very helpful for our survival of the species previously. But right now, what happens is, for example, I was raised by parents who were born in the Soviet times. You know, capitalism was like the worst thing possible. So they raised me with the values of, you know, not necessarily, you know, not communist, but the values that were very geometrically opposite to capitalist values, let's say. And then we arrived to the United States. So my programming is working in the way that my parents' environment was, where they would survive best. But for me, these values are now instilled in my subconscious, and they're actually hindering my survival in this current environment. So because we're moving around so much, and because things change so much, it's really important for us to understand that our programming during the first 7 years of our life could be detrimental to you know, to our growth, to our health, to lots of different things. So that's just to explain how it works in early childhood. But there are also subtler things that happen at every society, whether it's, you know, capitalist or not. We, from the early age on, we teach our children that there's something wrong with being natural, primitive, and wild. Everything, in reality, everything that children do is absolutely natural and normal, and if we allowed them to follow their natural desires, they would grow up without any mental issues, without you know, health problems would be at the minimum, and they would be really adapted to you know, like really aligned to who they are, grounded. For instance, how they eat, you know, like from the early age on. And, you know, as a mom, I know how it is. I have a 6-year-old, so you have this tendency to say, like, stop making a mess. But that whole process of, you know, like making a big mess with I remember my daughter eating the beet soup and making this huge mess on a table, on the floor. She was like fully red. That's the most beautiful way to learn to interact with your environment in terms of food. That's how you learn and really take advantage of your senses, and you navigate through life in that way afterwards, where your senses are guiding you to what type of food you need, what type of vitamins you need. It becomes natural and instinctive. You don't need a nutritionist to tell you what you need. You become sort of attuned to all the senses and all the external cues that communicate with your body. That happens all the time. We're just completely disconnected from it, and that's because we tell our kids that they're doing something wrong. Then there's the whole, you know, like, behave yourself, don't run. And granted, there are cars on the street, but you know, we spent 2 years during the pandemic in the wilderness, And it was amazing because I could let my daughter run wild. And it's the best ways for them to be, to be themselves, to expend their energy, to really connect to nature, to make a mess, to learn from their own mistakes, right? To interact with nature. And when we preclude that from happening, we're creating individuals in our society who are very controlling and judgmental of themselves and others, by default, because they were told that there's something wrong with them. So it creates this disconnect inadvertently. If I can't do this and I want to do this, then there's something wrong with me. If I'm feeling this urge and my mom constantly tells me it's wrong, then there's something wrong with me. And we slowly, completely disconnect from our body, and we start living in our mind. And that's the biggest issue in our society, is that we are completely disconnected from the physical part, which it is our vehicle, it is what we have. And that's why I've created the Sensefulness Method, where I really bring people back to the body. Because what happens is, if you're living in your mind, you're never really present, because the mind is constantly in the future, in the past. It has created already certain projections of who you are. So in a way, it's almost like you're living, there's another image that you've projected yourself upon, and everything you do, you sort of refer back to that instead of really referring back to who you truly are. So there's like this split personality almost that you have created, and maybe there are a couple of them that you've created. So in a way, being a slave of our mind, which is like most people live in the mind these days, is the worst absolute way to go with living, because you're never fully present with yourself. You're following some programmings that were put into you. You think you want something, but that's something that was put into you like in the first 7 years of your life, or you follow through that incredible plan to get married to the Prince Charming and get that dream job, and you get there and you're like, my God, I'm miserable. This is like the worst thing I could possibly imagine. And you're like, well, what happened? That's really what I wanted, right? No, you didn't want that. You don't even know what you want, because we were told from the early age on not to allow our wants and desires to be heard. We were told to constantly suppress them and follow certain rules. And some rules are important, granted. Like we live in a society, we can't be fully wild. That's not my suggestion either. I think there's an equilibrium, but to know how far we've come, or we've separated from our natural wild natures, is really important, because once you bring even a little bit of that back, you start really connecting to that source energy, to that energy of the vitality that's guiding you, and everything just starts falling into place. So this can be done in a number of different ways, and this is something that we'll be working in this journey that we're preparing for. You guys are prepared already, but it keeps undergoing changes, because there's always like something new that we want to bring to you. But on my end, I'm really going to be working with you on this, how do we reconnect with this body energy? And that can be done through movement. A lot of times we are told to move in a certain way, even when we, movement is great for us, we know, but if we follow certain sets, like we go to the gym and we follow a certain routine, and we think that we've done good for ourselves. Yes, in a certain way, yes, but you haven't used the entire range of movement, which is about self-expression, really. So movement, if it's used correctly, it's not only a way to be healthy and lose weight. That will be kind of a side effect of that. But movement becomes a way for you to express who you are. Movement becomes a way for you to connect to your emotions and express them, so that they don't stick to your body. So one exercise that I love doing, and this can be done with any kind of movement, but I like running on the beach, for instance. So this is how it works. You start at point A and you're going to point B, right? You connect to a certain emotion that you're going through. Let's say you're going through a fight with your boyfriend and you're absolutely angry with him. So this, when you start at point A, you allow yourself to really embody in your body that emotion of anger and frustration. And as you're running towards point B, you are allowing that emotion and that expression of anger to come out in your body. It can come out in the movement. You might use your arms to punch. You might use your some sounds to make like angry sounds. You might, stomp while you're running. So that type of, through your body, embodying that sensation that you're feeling, that emotion that you're feeling, will allow you not only to, express how you're feeling, but it will immediately translate that negative energy into energy you needed to exercise. So you don't need to expend more energy. You've just allowed that negative energy to become something really positive for yourself. Stress is the same thing. Like, allow that stress to turn into endorphins and fill your whole body with feel-good hormones. And then as you get to point B, you want to have expressed all of your anger, and at that point B, you throw that anger into the ocean. For me, where I'm, running, and I throw that anger into the ocean and I allow it to stay there. You can visualize it in any way that you want, like an anchor dragging it down into the bottom of the ocean. And then as you start running back, you connect to a totally different part of yourself. Now you have expressed that emotion, and now what you want to do is you want to really allow the forces of nature, the elements, to really fill you, that space that you have opened up where that negative emotion was sitting, you fill it up with something really positive. So you allow the sunlight to fill you up with the energy of, this cleansing light, right? You feel that pure energy coming into you and through your skin, right, and through your pores. You feel that air, oxygen, and this vital force that you breathe in going through your nose and clearing all of the stagnated energy in your body, and you really feel that it's interacting with each and one of your cells to rejuvenate, regenerate all of your cells. And then you feel the sand with your, I love running barefoot, and this is why, because you really feel the sand, and aside from a really great massage, it's like you're getting a foot massage right there, you're also allowing for all of that negative energy to be grounded, and you allow for that connection to happen with Mother Earth, and you get this powerful energy that she has back through the soles of your feet. And whatever, maybe it's the sound of the waves, maybe it's the sound of the trees as you're running, or even human beings, as you're running, you look at someone and they look back at you, and there's this interaction that happens. So all of these energetic connections with our external environment, they fill us up with energy. So again, this exercise, remember, from point A to point B is where you allow to feel what you were feeling, and now you allow yourself on the way back to get refilled with really positive energy. So that's just one exercise that I wanted to share with you, but there are a number of them, and this is related to movement, but this works for the way that you eat, the way that you sleep. It's related to your sexuality. It's related to the way, to your creativity, how you express yourself. So everything, absolutely everything you do can be done using this reconnection to our wild energy. With the Sensefulness Method that I use, it's really, you just tap into the present moment through your body, using the body as an anchor, and you allow it to guide you. Without denying whatever you're feeling. So if it's painful, you allow that to happen, but eventually it brings you to this pure bliss, because when you're in the present moment, there's no judgment of bad or good. You're just there, right? So, and that's what wilderness is about. That's what wild is about. It's really allowing, surrendering, having the courage to allow yourself to be led by your natural design, by your natural flow, by nature, by um, you know, instinct, intuition. There are different ways that you can call this, and it's really a journey that has to do with living healthy from that until to living with purpose and reconnecting with your spirituality. To me, actually, there's no distinction between the two. It's just a journey that you start with the physical body and then you travel to the spiritual and then you connect them. I think one of the things that we need to really reconsider in the way that we you know, are moving through a lot of the shifts and that are happening around us is that we try to compartmentalize things, define things in a certain way, and sometimes it's really about allowing things to merge. Like there is, I don't know what they called it. There's a book I was reading where they just gave one name to the whole, like body, mind, energy, or body, mind, spirit. It just becomes one unit. You don't worry about healing your spirit separately, healing your mind separately. It's all one unit. There's no separation. It's oneness. Or you know, saying like I'm living. It's just a way of living that's fully connected to the present moment, where you don't have to create these separation distinctions. And so you might be you know, moving, doing exercise, dancing, and it's all part of the same journey. There's no you know, you don't have to do that 1 hour at the gym and then go dancing at night, and then you know, it's all part of the same self-expression of authentic you, of being well and living this pleasurable wellness and living in alignment with your natural design. So that's what it's about, and I just wanted to share a little bit of my thoughts and this exercise that I shared with you. Try it out. It could be done with dance, it could be done with swimming, it could be done with hiking, it could be done with anything, walking, but I like doing it with running, so I've shared that with you. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll try to respond to you later. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget the journey is coming up on October 10th. Liana will have more information to you, and the three of us, Fabi, Liana, and myself, are really, really excited to invite you to this journey. That's going to be a beautiful way to reconnect with this wild feminine energy that is really waiting to guide us to who we truly are. So thanks for listening and have a wonderful weekend.